And welcome back to another week at Atheists on Air Beyond the Trailer Park. Glad to be here. So to start off this week, I actually have a couple of things from secular TV I wanted to talk about. And first of all, there is a really cool contest going on from secular TV. So if you haven't checked out secular TV yet, it's a channel on YouTube. There's all kinds of really cool content creators. We're one of them. And we're trying to create a diverse group of secularly themed shows and content. And we're having a contest. And the contest, basically, they want you to go and watch some secular TV shows and pick a clip from any show or multiple clips, whatever you like, but get some favorite moments from any of the shows on secular TV and send us them to secular TV in the comments. And the categories they have are outtakes and mistakes and funny moments, or a serious, inspirational, or great point. And the prize in each category is a very cool secular TV t-shirt. So have a look, see what's there. You can even do like a montage of clips if you wanted, as long as it falls between 5 and 45 seconds long. And you should have the show and episode noted in the description. You can be, as I say, a multi-clip mashup, or you can just have one specific clip that you think is really awesome. And there are no team members from secular TV entering. It's strictly our fans. So have a look and see what you can come up with, and let's submit something really cool. What's going to happen is the leadership team at Secular TV is going to review all the submissions. They're going to pick the top 5 in each category and then submit them for the public to vote. So make it really cool, because everybody out there who watches Secular TV will get a chance to vote on the top 5 clips. And so good luck with that, and we look forward to seeing your submissions. And secondly, I just want to talk a little bit about secular TV, and we also have a t-shirt store. So you can go online and look at the really cool t-shirts of secular TV and maybe support the network and pick some up. And we also have a Patreon. So if you head over to Patreon and look for Secular TV, we would love the support. All the proceeds go back into the network and helping the content creators be the best at what they're doing and make the best shows and content that we can. So have a look and check us out, and hopefully you'll join the contest. And if you feel inclined to, please support us on Patreon. So thank you for that. So tonight, Canada is invading once again, and before I get to our guest, I have our special guest star, of course, Miss Ashley. How you doing?
Hey y'all, how you doing?
Excellent, excellent. It was above freezing today. It's not so much, but hey, I went out with like no gloves and almost no coat, so it's getting.
I got my flip-flop weather back.
I know. I know. Foda was bragging about that earlier. I said, well, you better keep that up there until I get there, because I would like to wear flip-flops in April myself.
Yes, so. I would definitely bring your flip-flops.
Yes. Oh, good. And just in time, my awesome co-host, Beth.
Howdy, howdy, howdy.
She just raced upstairs from her work, so that's awesome. She's barely late at all. That's amazing. So go ahead. What's that?
Oh, I said I suckered someone into mopping my floor for me, so.
Hey, Beth, can you sucker somebody into mopping mine for me, too?
Yeah, no.
So, as I was mentioning, Canada's taken over again, and this week I would like to introduce our guest, also from my neck of the woods of Ontario, Spencer Lucas. How are you doing, Spencer?
Very good. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, you're very welcome. So, Spencer is into all kinds of activism stuff, and he has started the premier conference in Ontario, and we will get to that shortly because it's amazing stuff, and we definitely want to talk lots about that. Spencer, we'd like to get to know you a little bit, though, first. So you're from Ontario. What did you have a religious background, or what was that?
No, and in fact, I was probably 6 to 8 years old before I understood what a religious background even was.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm originally from Wales. My family immigrated in '75 when I was 7. Do the math. A
Yep.
long time ago. Hence the no accent anymore.
Yeah.
And my parents are not religious. They weren't anti-religious in the sense that it really wasn't talked about. My one set of my grandparents, at least, were also not religious. In fact, they probably talked about it more than my parents. In fact, the very first time I heard the word humanist was from my grandmother, probably when I was around 10. I had no idea what it meant, but I remember hearing the word and sort of hearing it again many years later and then understanding what she was talking about. But I remember when soon after we emigrated and sort of hearing other people talk about this thing called God, and when you're not indoctrinated into it and you're not surrounded by it, that concept sounds really weird to you.
It would.
I would argue that if you sort of kept everybody in a bubble, and to some degree I was in a bit of a bubble, in the religious, as far as the religious world went,
Mm-hmm.
um, it becomes a bizarre concept. It was tantamount to an adult who believed in Santa Claus. That's how strange it sounded to my ears. And I remember sort of looking up to them, thinking, I don't believe that you believe this.
Right.
It is literally unbelievable.
It was
Uh,
pretty bizarre for you, huh?
it was, and I, because I found it so strange, I never lost that fascination with the strangeness of it, and I've had sort of a mad curiosity my entire life, or certainly since the tender age of maybe 7 or 8, of why intelligent adult people, how they get to believe this thing which seems patently unbelievable on its face.
Yeah.
It defies belief that people believe, I think is the way I might want to put it. And so one way or the other, whether it be sort of informally or formally through education, I have investigated why people believe the things that they believe in.
Right.
And I've come to a much deeper understanding and appreciation of why people believe now than I had before. I used to sort of not make fun of religion so much when I was younger, but I used to. It was sort of a bit of a joke, and I used to like starting out things in a bit of a smart-ass, provocative way. And I remember that's never left me, I suppose. But I suppose at the age of maybe 9 or 10, it didn't come up very often in the schoolyard. Obviously, religion in a secular public school doesn't, but it
Well,
sometimes.
at least up here that's the case. Not
Yeah,
so down there.
yeah. It didn't come up very often, but if it did sort of accidentally come up, I would use the excuse. And to this day, I don't know why I presented this way, but I would say that I was Orthodox, which would
Right.
then beg the question from the person I was talking to clarify, well, Orthodox what? And then I got to say the punchline, I'm Orthodox atheist. And then the confusion would set in, and then it would spark a conversation.
No, that's a good way to do it, actually. I like that.
Yeah.
For sure. Good.
Why?
So,
Yeah. Go ahead.
go ahead. I was going to say, so what did you kind of conclude was the reason a lot of people believe this stuff after all of your sort of investigation, out of curiosity?
Well, when I mean, I've done a lot of reading on it, and then even though I didn't do any sort of, I had no direct schooling on it. I used I had my undergrad degree is in psychology, so obviously understanding human behavior sort of
Hmm.
helped me out a little bit. But when I did my undergrad thesis, one of my variables, my independent variables, was religious ideology. Um, the core of the thesis wasn't a religious themed thesis. It was on professional moral decision making.
Okay.
But the interesting thing is, I used their political and religious ideology to help understand how they came to make these moral decisions, and the verdict in my particular thesis, and the caveat is it had sort of very few subjects, about 25 or 28, so the effect size would become small, but
Hmm.
the basic conclusion was that the guiding ethical principles that they were given didn't predict their moral decision making. What predicted their moral decision making was their innate political and religious ideology.
Okay. That's
So
pretty
what they ended up doing is they ended up rationalizing the standards of the ethical codes that they were given. They sort of rationalized picking those particular standards. They actually believed that that guided their decision making, when in fact it was that unconscious, innate ideology that dictated their response. That was the predictive feature.
funny. Hmm.
So these
Yeah.
things are in bed and they're unconscious. And I've read, Dawkins and Hitchens and Harris and so on and so on and so forth, but again, I was raised an atheist, so I spent my entire life not in a church.
Yes.
So when I was 40, for the first time, really, I decided to go to church. And it became a bit of a social, anthropological, psychological, informal study where I went to, at the time I was living in Sudbury, Ontario, and
Mhm.
I would go to every church I could get my hands on, listen to the sermon, the whatever, and then gain an audience with the leader of that church, where the priest, pastor, reverend, whatever, um, and I learned a lot through that. I think really it kind of boiled down to that social experience, that
Right.
the idea of congregation, the idea of being among your tribe,
Yes.
doing communal things, that kind of thing.
Because I've seen recently there's been studies that show a secular community can afford the same kind of benefits that any religious community can. And so it seems like it's all about the community and the belonging as to,
Yeah.
what the common denominator is kind of seems to be irrelevant.
And why wouldn't it? And it should be the least surprising thing that it would be, as the idea of community would be as useful in the secular world as it would be in the theological world, the religious world. It shouldn't be surprising. It's, to me, as a sort of a deeply skeptical and lifelong atheist, it surprises me still that these things are surprising to other people.
Yeah. Well, I certainly commend you going to all those churches because I don't think I could stand it. Of course, I was raised in the United Church of Canada, so I was made to go to Sunday school every week, and I got to hating it. It's
Well, I would try to get I mean, when I was 40, my son was 7, 18, yeah, about that. 17, yeah, and I would try to get him to go with me.
yeah.
And I've been several times already, and I found the experience eye-opening and exhilarating and exciting and informative, and and I would convince them, try to convince them of this. Like, you got to go. It's really fun. And you say it's my right as an atheist to sleep in on a Sunday.
Yeah.
Really fun.
And I had no
Yeah.
comeback for that. So good for you. But
Yeah, I couldn't, and yeah, I just remember all those Sundays being dragged out there, and our church, I mean, in the United Church was pretty progressive. Even now, it's fairly liberal, but they used to actually provide a clipboard with a bag of crayons for us older kids, because the younger ones, I think it was up to like 11 or 12. They were allowed during the sermon to go down to the basement and have like a fun time of arts and crafts. But once you got like 12 or 13, you weren't allowed to do that anymore. So they provided us with like paper and crayons and stuff. And my friend and I would sit and play tic-tac-toe or hangman through the whole thing because it was just so mind-numbingly boring.
you wouldn't play religious headman, would you?
No, no, that was back when I was still a believer, so we were bored, but we were trying to be sort of respectful too. So
Okay.
we played regular old hang, more so X's and O's though, because we didn't require as much communication to do X's and O's. With Hangman, sometimes you might have to like talk, and parents frowned on that. And then when we got to be about 14, the two of us realized that if we volunteered to run the arts and the crafts for the little kids, then we could get out of the sermon too. So we started doing that.
See,
I
didn't have
tried
any.
that.
I didn't have any experiences. I didn't have that history of boredom that maybe even sort of. I mean, a lot of people are hurt within church in one way or the other. Maybe hurt on the way out and ostracized and all that baggage. I come with none of it. So for me, it was just entering a different world, and again, sort of without being overtly rude, a bizarre world.
Yep. Absolutely. I mean, I think if I was going to go to, like, something I've actually would love to do now even, would be to go to a Hindu temple, because I have read a bit about some of the Hindu deities, and I find some of that kind of fascinating. And I would find that intriguing and from a sociological viewpoint, very interesting. But to go to like a Christian church, I'd be like, ugh, been there, done that. I don't care what denomination is; it's all the same crap. So that's how I would feel about it. And I know you would know Beth is actually from quite a heavy evangelical background. Her parents were almost ministers, not quite, but theologians. Theologians. So she's had fun going to Bible college with some of the heavy hitters that are still out there today. So she's had a
What does Dan Barker call a theologian, or the study of theology? It's a subject without an object.
Yeah.
Ooh, I like that. And then for contrast, Miss Ashley there, she's sort of been your average kind of believer, and she's just kind of deconverted over the last year, so that's why she's new to all of this. And
Oh, it's fresh.
Yeah.
she is. She
She's a
is.
noob.
Tender.
I'm
That's why she's diving into that lovely Bible for the first time, because it makes more sense when you go through with a skeptical mind, I think. But
Yes, because I would have never made it through as a child or even as a teenager. Look on this, just on Genesis chapter 1 verse 2. I'd close it. It was too boring for me.
Have you gotten to Leviticus yet?
that's what she's on now.
Oh boy. Actually, Leviticus is one of my favorites, so I'm odd.
Well, please explain to me which part is your favorites, because I'm having a hard time getting past. Well, I had a hard time getting past 1 through 8.
Well,
It all says the
my
same thing, except
my
the.
well, it does. It repeats in 3 different sections, basically. My
Mhm.
favorite is what they call the Holiness Code, which is usually chapter 17 through 24,
Okay,
and
yeah.
that's where you find the condemnation of homosexual, well, alleged condemnation of homosexuality. And but yeah, I mean, I specialized when I was in college. Old Testament was my thing.
Mhm.
The first 5 books. I hated Exodus, though. Although the movie was pretty good.
That's the Charlton Heston one.
Yes.
Well, we actually were like, I try not to. I don't want to read ahead because I want
Yeah.
to. I don't mind getting spoilers. Everybody knows that, but I don't want to like just read ahead because I want people to hear my honest reaction. But I literally
Mhm.
started looking through it tonight, saying, "Is there any chapter that doesn't repeat itself, but just change the type of animal that we're sacrificing here?"
No, not really.
Well, I don't
But
want to give it away, but both Walter White and Jesus die in the end.
Oh, well, I just won't read the Bible. I'm done.
one thing I will say, Ashley, pay attention to what they say about the sacrifices and why, and pay attention to the separation that is being delineated in the book of Leviticus, and why Leviticus, the law, some of the laws, not all of them, because the 10 Commandments are in there, but pay attention to why the separation that Yahweh is forcing on the Israelites,
I will definitely do that because I'm trying
and
to
watch,
find something interesting.
yeah, and watch for the references to paganism.
Okay.
And when I say paganism, I mean old school paganism, not the neo, because anything not quote Judaic was considered pagan. So
Right.
anything not of Judaism. So
They're
yeah, pay attention to that.
I
they were
will.
going to be drawing pentacles and calling the corners, so no.
Well, actually, I don't know if it's in Leviticus. I can't remember. The pentacle is actually a Christian symbol. It is
Oh,
not.
those
Yeah,
guys stole stuff from everybody.
it's actually. I don't know if it's in Leviticus. I can't remember. I'd have to look it up again. But yeah, that's not a quote bad symbol. It was actually a symbol of protection,
Okay.
which it still is.
So Spencer, did you studied multiple religions besides Christianity?
Not really. I mean, not other than reading, I suppose. In Sudbury, you've got a series of Christian churches, obviously, lots of Catholic churches, and
Mm-hmm.
I believe we do have one mosque. I don't know that we had a synagogue. I certainly hadn't heard of one.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
Sudbury is a little. For those of you who don't know, it's a little up north. So it gets the further north you get, the less diverse a population you get. So
I have a
yeah,
question for both of you.
yes.
What about is Pentecostalism popular up there? Charismatic Pentecostalism.
define popular.
Well, is it? Well, down here we have, of course, the New Apostolic Reformation, which is under the umbrella of the Dominion of Theology. So, with the speaking in tongues, is that like? Do you have a lot of churches that
Well, but put it this
espouse
way,
that, or?
confronting my own assumptions. This is why it was good for me to go to church. I keep on having that Hosier song stuck in my head now. Take me to church. I took myself to church, but that's why it was a good experience for me to go, because I mean, around that time or soon after, maybe a couple of years after I started going to church, I joined a pre-existing group in Sudbury called the Sudbury Humanist Association, and eventually I ended up leading that group, became the president of that group, and we wanted to have a higher profile, so we started the Atheist Bus Campaign in Sudbury. And somebody asked me around that time when we were thinking about what logo to put on the bus and what the public reaction would be, was, do you expect there to be an outcry? Do you expect there to be indifference? What do you expect? I said, I don't know that I know my own community well enough to know what the reaction was going to be. Yes, we have a bunch of Catholic churches. Yes, we have a few Pentecostal churches, and so on and so forth. But I don't know. I mean, it's one thing to have a church and to have a bit of a congregation. It's another thing to have fervent believers, and within those congregations, we all know that in every given congregation you have atheists that are there and being very silent, right? In fact, we know sometimes the preacher is an atheist, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Just look at the clergy project and so on. Look at Ryan Bell, who came out last year, and I think even, or as recently, roughly, was Bob Ripley here in the Toronto area in Ontario.
That's
yeah,
right.
and he was the head of the United. Was he head of the United Church? He was a leader.
It was the United Church. I don't know if he was the head, but he was up there pretty high.
Yeah, and part of it significantly for 25 years, so not a casual believer. So I didn't really know what to expect, but I did in my journey, going to church a couple of years prior. My eyes were opened quite a bit. I did go to a Kingdom Hall quite a bit, actually.
That must be interesting.
Well, they loved me. It was the only church that I was swarmed at.
Oh, wow.
That's the only time in my life that I was swarmed by human beings.
That I don't understand, because they believe that salvation is so limited. I've always wondered, when they come to the door, it's like, so if I convert, do I get your spot in the 144,000? Like, how does that work?
Yeah.
I don't know. I've not asked that question. I just know the reaction I got was. I think part of the difference in that church to most churches I went to, and maybe most churches other people go to, is like, for instance, the closest church to me at the time was probably the largest church in Sudbury. It was a Pentecostal church called Glad Tidings. It could seat 1,000 people.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was a sort of a almost stadium type or amphitheater type seating, and it was often rented out for
concerts or something.
Secular productions, like our Canadian viewers will know Stuart McLean and the Vinyl Cafe. They would do their show there if they came to Sudbury, for instance, and they would pack it, and then some. The several times I had gone to Glad Tidings, I always counted heads wherever I went, because that was one of the things that was interesting to me. They had between 150 and 300 people on a given, so I mean, barely a third full on a given day. And when you're in that kind of a church, you don't stand out. People come and go. People don't go every week.
Yeah.
But if you go to a Kingdom Hall, the
Hi. Am I back? Uh-oh, we lost Spencer too. And we lost Beth. Yay for live TV.
Did I break the internet?
I think you did. But we're okay. We're still alive, so that's good.
I think it would be more interesting if I was talking about Scientology and the internet went down. That would be.
I know. We actually had an ex-Scientologist on the show a couple months ago. It's kind of cool. But it's funny you talking about the Kingdom Hall. In 2012, I had the opportunity to work over in Romania, and the hotel, and of course in Romania, they are almost exclusively Orthodox Christian.
Mhm.
So it's like a subset of the Greek Orthodox, but it's more so in Eastern Europe. And it's like something like 90% of people were Orthodox over there. And the hotel I was staying in, one side was on one side of the hotel was a Baptist church, and the other side was a Kingdom Hall.
Oh,
It's like really weird.
yeah,
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
that's interesting experiences, though.
yeah. I saw faith healing, which I did not expect to see in Sudbury in 2010. For instance, I sort of like checked my watch. Yeah, it's still 2010. This is crazy that this is happening. Did not expect to see that in Sudbury. There was a church that was really kind of based on, I guess it was sort of modeled after sort of a charismatic church.
Hmm.
There was another church in the valley just north of Sudbury that was a biker church. And
Oh,
a big motorcycle that was maybe 20 feet wide on the side of the church.
shit.
It was a guy, he was from Texas.
Ah,
He was a biker from Texas, and he had started a church in the Sudbury area. And so a lot of really interesting things I did not expect to see.
that would be freaky.
Yeah.
So, what made you kind of go from exploring all this interesting religious stuff to moving into more activism?
The activism probably started sort of two couple things sort of coming together at the same time. It probably started a little bit indirectly with my son. He was um, back in 2007-ish when podcasting. It's interesting that we're doing a podcast because that's kind of where it started. Um, he got me onto this new thing called podcasting, and eventually onto this new show called Skeptic's Guide to the Universe.
Okay, yep.
Good
Uh,
show.
yeah, which I kind of gobbled up and became a big fan of, and it was through them that I heard of um, the wider skeptics active sort of uh, community.
Mm-hmm.
Not strictly an atheist community, but more of a skeptics community, which
Right.
I feel sort of a great adherence to, because I think my atheism is, well, if it's not rooted in skepticism, it's rooted in the lack of indoctrination, perhaps, in my
Yeah.
particular case. But and then Andrew and I went to TAM 8 in 2010, I think it was, and there were 1,200 attendees at that conference in Las Vegas that year.
Mm.
My first experience walking into a room of 1,000 people plus, where you could talk to a random person about the new Sam Harris book, and not only would they have read it, but they would know who Sam Harris was, and you didn't have to have a pre-discussion about these kinds of things. If I talk to a friend, if I talk to a colleague about End of Faith or something, they were like, "Well, never read it." "Oh, it's by Sam Harris. He's never heard of him." So they would always have to give the backstory before you could go ahead with what was interesting and on your mind. So it was really nice, sort of walking in and sort of being among your own. You hear that all the time, being around like-minded people, but being around a lot of like-minded people is quite a buzz.
It is.
It was probably the first time emotionally I understood what a congregation was.
Hmm. I just would like some people in real life to even know what a fucking book is.
Yeah. Yes. Beth has been down the rabbit hole of stupid people again. So.
Oh, we won't even go there.
Well, Beth blogs pretty extensively, Spencer, and her specialty is crazies like anti-vaxxers and conspiracy nuts and the Dominionists down in the States, that kind of thing. So yeah, she's been down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, Dominionists scare me, and I can't say that I've confronted a Canadian Dominionist, but I'm sure.
They're slowly moving in up there.
That's
literally.
If anybody's gonna know, she will. That's her specialty.
Well, I get my information from people that have been doing it a lot longer than me. Some of my quote sources have been tracking these guys for 25 years, and it just. I'm going back through some of my files because I'm trying to organize, and some of the stuff that I've saved, I'm like, wow. It's really scary.
It is. Absolutely is. Well, let's take a break and have our creation moment, and then we'll come back and talk to Spencer some more. And let's hope that my computer is a little faster than it was last time. Come on. It's thinking. See, the great part is I can edit this out before I upload the audio.
Editing is beautiful.
Atheist's nightmare. A well-made banana is just the right shape for a human mouth. It's chewy, easy to digest, and it's even curved toward the face to make the whole process so much easier.
I choose to believe.
Oh. Dang it.
That the earth is young. When we do that, when we understand that creation is the truth, then we understand where all of our doctrine comes from as well.
I just want to let you know that there actually is a book out there that actually tells us where matter came from. Bill, I do want to say that there is a book out there.
Next time you hear on television somebody say millions of years ago, what's the question we're going to ask them? Were you there? Were you there? Call them up on the telephone and say, excuse me, Mr. TV man, were you there? Only way we could know what happened in the past if someone was there to tell us. That's right, dinosaurs lived beside people. And of course you'll have an evolutionist who'll say, that's not right, dinosaurs lived millions of years ago. What do you ask them? Were you there?
Welcome to Creation Moments, a little slice of creation silliness that I get in my email every day, and I'd like to share it with you so that we can all get a taste of just how crazy creation shit is. On this week's Creation Moment, Taylor is going to talk about the glasshead barrelfish. At least he's not trying to dabble in psychology this time. Let's see what he has to say about the fish.
The University of Tübingen's Institute of Anatomy recently discovered a fish with what they call a previously unknown type of eye, unquote. The glasshead barrel eye has a cylindrical eye pointing upwards to see prey, predators, and potential mates. But the eye also has a mirror-like second retina, which is able to detect bioluminescent flashes created by deep-sea denizens to the sides and below, reports Professor Hans-Joachim Wagner.
Okay, so this deep-sea fish has developed the ability to detect bioluminescent light. That's an excellent example of an organism adapting to its surroundings. The deep sea has very little light. That's why some species have developed ways to work around this limitation. However, something tells me Taylor didn't record this just to tell us about some interesting sea creatures.
Actually, it's not really a previously unknown type of eye. Reflector eyes are usually only found in invertebrates, but there is one other vertebrate that also uses a combination of reflective and refractive lenses in its eyes, the deep-sea brown snout spookfish.
Well, duh. Taylor's making it sound as if the people who discovered this fish are ignorant about this type of reflective eye, and that's just not true. The first spookfish specimen was caught in 2009, and the glasshead is of the same family. That the scientists who discovered the glasshead would think it was unique and completely new is ridiculous. A spookfish's eye is so well known in this field that the glass head was immediately linked to that species family. It's not as if they had to dissect and study the fish to realize it has reflective qualities in the eye. This type of eye is so unusual, it actually looks like the fish has 4 eyes instead of 2. I think Taylor is going off the rails again.
According to the report, both the glass-head barrel eye and the brown snout spookfish developed this amazingly complex eye from different kinds of tissue. So if you're going to believe in evolution, you'll have to deal with the fact that this unusual type of eye had to evolve twice, independently of one another, using 2 different solutions to the same problem. Those of us who accept biblical creation often wonder at the blindness of evolutionary scientists. How can they continue to cling to mindless mutations and natural selection when only a supremely intelligent creator could account for the incredibly complex eye of the glass-head barrel eye?
Oh, for fuck's sakes, Taylor. You'll have to deal with the fact this is not an issue for evolution to deal with. It shows exactly how evolution works. The fact that 2 fish who live in similar conditions, i.e. the deep sea, could evolve similar eyes is not a problem for evolution. This is exactly the kind of thing we should expect, as it is the traits which promote survival in the environment the creature lives in that are the traits that get propagated. It's entirely possible for 2 organisms to take different evolutionary paths to solve the same environmental issue. And Taylor's exaggerating the, quote, different kinds of tissue that each fish's eye evolved from. He makes it sound like one fish's eye devolved from completely different kinds of tissue, like cartilage versus soft tissue or skin. Again, this is not the case. In reality, they have both grown a layer of guanine crystals that reflect the bioluminescent light. Each fish just grew the crystals on different tissues in the eye structure, one on the skin of the eye and the other on the retina. It's not that big of a stretch, people. And scientists are not blind. People like Taylor just take bits and pieces of facts and try and twist it around in an attempt to legitimize creation. If a, quote, supremely intelligent creator was behind things, why not just create eyes that could see everything in the darkness of the deep sea? How hard could that be for a supremely intelligent creator? Because the barrel eye family of fish, they have developed a way to detect bioluminescent light, but they can easily miss the approach of predators and are still quite vulnerable. And if a creator already had a perfectly good design of eye to accomplish this feat, why would he make it out of different structures in the other fish? Why not just plunk the same eye design in both fish? A good creator could have done a lot better than that. The prayer is ridiculous as usual. Father, I thank you, for you have given me eyes to see. Not only am I able to see the world around me more clearly, I am able to see, through the eyes of faith, the work that your Son has done for me to secure eternal life. So, screw blind people, and thanks for the God goggles? Ugh. People need to get rid of that shit, not be thankful for it. Most rational folks will agree that there's no afterlife, and that God sacrificing himself to save you from himself is fucking stupid. And fish with funky eyes have nothing to do with it. Thanks for listening, and catch us next week for another creation moment.
I love that last part. Sacrifice himself to save himself. That's one of my favorites.
Save you from himself. Oh yeah, whoops, sorry. One of these days I'll get that sorted out so it doesn't do stupid things. But yeah, I just love that. It's like, oh, well, this is different, so it must have been God. Like, no, you idiot. You don't know what the hell you're talking about.
God of the gaps. Don't understand something's gotta be God. Oh, there's a mystery. Gotta be God.
his argument goes against himself because he's like, oh, the fact that the eye is made up of different tissues in the different fish is anti-evolution. I'm like, no. Why would your God be dumb enough to like, well, I've made this eye and it works, but it's a different fish, so I'm going to start from scratch and do it all over again? No. Oh, well. So, yeah, that was the fun for this week. We'll see what they send me an email for next time. But Miss Ashley,
I love the creation moments.
oh,
Yeah.
thanks. Ashley was telling me she just started a biology class and she's learning everything there is to know about evolution, which is very cool.
It is. It's. I didn't quite understand it before I took my biology class, but now that I've got this whole, just this whole thing of information, it took me until last night, but I really understand it now. And so when I see things, I'm like, oh, that's evolution.
That's awesome.
Oh, gotta love it.
And tell everybody what your instructor said at the beginning of the class, because I thought that was fucking awesome.
Okay, so he sent an email out to all the students the first day of class, and it said, this is not a religious studies class. This is a biology class, a science class. Any discussion or anyone who brings religion into the any of the discussions, or if religion becomes a part of your assignments that are submitted, you will receive 0 credit.
Oh, wow.
I know.
Yeah, it was a one small step towards mankind, but it happened. So I was like, yes. And then I actually did have somebody bring up religion, and I kindly informed him, look, I'm not willing to get a 0 because you brought religion into this, but if you would like to discuss it outside the classroom.
Now, are you in a physical classroom, Ashley, or are you doing this?
I am actually taking online classes.
Okay, because it's funny because this actually, the whole religion issue in biology class is one of the, I'll say wedge issue for lack of a better word, or part of the wedge issue, that whole thing with high schoolers, where the students are, if they bring their religion in, they have to be graded the same way a standard student. So if someone says, well, tries to argue a biological point from a creationist standpoint, they cannot be penalized for that.
Right. They can't.
But now they're trying to push that issue into the universities and the colleges. And a lot of your biology professors are doing exactly what yours did, which I think is pretty cool.
Right.
Because
and yes, of course, the statement that was made to me about religion was, that I think the exact thing was that there's people out there trying to mess with the God's creation, and he doesn't agree with it now, nor will he ever agree with it, and how can anyone ever interfere with God's creation? Okay.
Well, yeah.
Do you have that problem up in Canada?
Certainly not to the same extent. I'm sure there's isolated instances of it.
Yeah.
This is not. I'm going to use a different example, but it's not a religious example. But we had very recently, it made national news. Queen's University, which is a highly respected university in Kingston, Ontario, just outside of, an hour and a half or so outside of Toronto, had a professor that was teaching, I believe, homeopathy. Was that correct, Deb?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes.
And it came to light, and she was censored for it. But nonsense will creep into even respectable universities, and I'm sure it's happening at high schools and
Yeah.
Well, I know a lot of our respected medical institutions like Cleveland Clinic. I think even Mayo Clinic is now too. They're latching on to CAM.
And
which is
what's that?
TAM is
Yeah.
your alternative medicine, like your homeopathy and stuff like that. And they're taking a pounding. Steve Novella, I know, writes quite a bit about it, and if I remember correctly, he's from Skeptic Guys. Oric does over at Science-Based Medicine. It's crazy and some of it is religious based. It's not even.
Yeah. One
Stupid
of the other
people.
members of medicine is the host of the Quackcast podcast called Mark Christlett, and he works out of. He's an infectious disease doctor out of Portland, Oregon, I believe.
Yeah.
And he calls them scams, which is supplementary, complementary, alternative medicine scams.
Well, I've been delving very deeply into MMS, Stepnose.
And what does that stand for people?
Mineral Miracle Solution is one of the names. Now, there's various names because of legal ramifications. They're changing up their acronym to bypass the FDA and stuff like that. But Orc's written about it. Mark Crispin has written about it quite extensively too. And it's just, it's basically, if people haven't seen the post that Stephanie shared, Stephanie Jones, who's a friend of the show, is basically it's basically chlorine bleach. Or let me rephrase that, a bleach product. It's an industrial strength, and they are diluting it to 22.4% and forcing their autistic children to drink it.
Yeah.
And they're giving enemas. Okay, one protocol calls for 8 times a day of drinking the solution, 3 times a week forcing enema on autistic children.
That's horrible.
And
they think this will think it will help cure autism. Yeah.
Well, how they phrase it, they say recover.
You want to take a kid that is wired to have sensory issues and react to those in a very negative way, and then put something extremely toxic and distasteful down their throat and up their bum.
Yeah.
Awful.
It's just it's crazy shit.
I'd like to see how that worked in the real world.
Go to No More Bleach. Look up December 2014 post. She has pictures of what comes out of their ass that they pick through and say, "Oh, look, it's a rope worm."
No, it's not. Yeah.
No such thing as a rope worm. Yeah, it's bizarre. I thought anti-vax was crazy. This is even worse.
Yeah, look like you'll probably have a preview of that for next week's show, most likely.
Hopefully.
Scary shit. So, Spencer, what made you decide to host a conference?
Momentary lapse of reason. I'm trying to think when the idea first came to me. I suppose in some ways it was born out of the idea of wanting to go to an atheist conference, and God damn it, no one was hosting one in my area. So if I wanted to go to one in my area, I guess I had to organize it. So that's, simply probably how it kind of came about.
As they say, necessity is the mother of invention.
Yeah. Sort of since I had the idea, or soon after I had the idea, I went to the only other, at that time, the only atheist conference in Canada, which was the Imagine No Religion conference in BC. I chatted with Bill Leisureward prior to going. He's the founder and organizer of that particular conference, and I went and thoroughly enjoyed it. I mean, it was he puts on a top-notch show. Speakers love going there. The attendees are love going there. He probably has around 75% sort of return rate. They keep on coming back year after year. And he's running his, the one I went to was the fourth incarnation of that conference. And I guess going to that conference and talking to Bill and already having the idea in my head, he knew that I was working this idea out. That sort of seeing him and seeing some of the behind the scenes, it made me confident enough to say that, yeah, I could give it a go and at least start with a one-day conference here in Ontario. And that's what happened last November 1st.
Yes, it was a great time to be had as well. It did pretty well, I think, for first time, and you know,
I was kind of stressed out, sort of leading up to it. I learned a lot from that experience. But I think if the core of your goals, and I think the core of my goal was to have something that was viable, something that was, I think for the most part, it was, did I have good speakers? Were there good talks? And was the crowd engaged? And I think if that was the measure of success, I think it was very successful.
I'd agree with that. It was very entertaining and very informative. There were speakers there that I actually didn't know of beforehand, and I was very glad to have heard them speak and learn a lot. I mean, the Katie talking about the science stuff was unbelievable. I had no idea things had gotten that bad. And that's the kind of information that the average person needs to know, I think.
Yeah, no, I think I can't say I've attended every atheist conference in North America, certainly not. I have done a lot of research on every conference in North America to see what kinds of talks they were giving, what kind of speakers they were giving, having, and whatnot. And not that I'm necessarily doing something tremendously different, but it was really important to me to build the conference from the talk up rather than the speaker down.
Right.
And I think that's what made last year's conference so successful, from sort of a sort of an exit interview type situation from the attendees' point of view. But maybe what made it less successful as far as the number of people that attended. And having said that, 200 people attended, so that was a pretty good first run, I think.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was good. But the danger of doing it from the talk up meant that you didn't necessarily have so-called atheist celebrities or household names.
Yeah.
Not too many people would have heard of Katie Gibbs prior to the conference, and I think everybody was very excited about her presentation and her organization, Evidence for Democracy. I don't think that many people knew Arthur Schaefer before his talk. You know, most bioethicists working in a university are not household names.
They should be. They should be, damn it.
Yes. They should be more well-known than Kim Kardashian.
That was exactly where my mind went to.
Yeah, she's the symbol for vacuous celebrities, I think. So.
Yes.
Yeah, so it was nice to give those people that kind of a venue, that kind of a stage. I think it was, we had Nate Phelps there that was really well known within our community, obviously.
Yes.
and a lot of people I know pre-conference went because he was on the ticket.
That would be why I went to begin
Yeah,
with. Yep.
yeah. So I think some local people knew some of the local talent, like Ali Rizvi, who you had on your show recently,
Yep.
and Zarmeen. I think locally they were kind of known. It's been kind of interesting how when I contacted Ali to speak, it was pretty early on. He was one of the first people I contacted, and he said yes, probably right away. It was before he was well known, like way before he started writing for Richard Dawkins, way before he got on the Joe Rogan podcast, and his star is rising really quickly, and rightfully so. I mean, he's
Absolutely.
outspoken, he's extremely well spoken, he's articulate, and right on the money as far as I can tell. And so
Oh,
I really appreciated getting him kind of early on.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He writes wonderful stuff, and he's not afraid to speak his mind on the Islamic issue, and he makes a lot of sense with that, and we need more people like him.
The two of the biggest compliments I got, and I got a lot, during and after the conference. One was from a speaker. I got many, but one stands out, and it was from Arthur Schaefer. We were. It was during the dinner break. We were walking over. Most of the day was done. We only had the three speakers in the late evening.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I've been to 100 conferences before, and there's usually one really good standout talk, and then the other ones you kind of sleep through. And he said, I was riveted for every single talk, and I think partly that was because the topics were so relevant, and that wasn't by accident. They were. I sort of searched the interwebs and the newspapers for what was kind of on everybody's mind,
Right.
and use those as sort of building blocks, as topics, and a little bit of ego, like what kind of conference do I want to go to, what speakers do I want to, what speeches do I want to hear, and hopefully other people want to hear those same kinds of conversations, and I think they did.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there was, like you said, everything was very pertinent and in scope of what people are thinking about now. I mean, dying with dignity, that's come up, and as we've had that recent Supreme Court ruling in Canada, and hopefully that means that they will come up with something intelligent instead of some stupid law again. And that, to have that on people's minds, so that when these topics come in the news, because they're up for a ruling or that sort of thing, or maybe they're an election platform issue, people can be more informed about that and make those, especially election choices, more as an informed person than just kind of going with the flow.
Yeah.
And I know, for me, and maybe you have seen this too, I find people say that, organizing atheists is like herding cats, and I've said, well, organizing Canadian atheists is like organizing or herding cats that are like stoned out on catnip or something, because we tend to be kind of an apathetic bunch. I don't know. Do you find that at all?
Not only do I find it, I wrote an article on it.
Ah, excellent.
If you're familiar with the Canadian Atheist blog, I've guest blogged on that blog a few times, and if you search for me on that blog, it'll be easy to find.
Excellent.
My article called Canadian Atheist.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. It's I find it to be a big problem up here. I mean, we have a regular meetup, as you know, you've attended before in the area, and I think it was a couple of months ago we had a young fellow there who he was just saying, well, I don't, this is nice and all, but I don't know why we bother. It's not a big deal, blah, blah, blah. I was like, no. We need to keep this up. Come on.
That was one of the things that the conference was supposed to address. If you remember my introduction to it was, I think one of the first words I said is, I want people to be a bit pissed off.
Yes.
My goal, I would have failed if you walked out not being a bit pissed off. That's something that you heard today. I think you got pissed off at where science is as far as the Canadian government goes. You probably got pissed off about a few other things as well, but I wanted to piss people off because there are things that are happening that are nonsensical, that are not fair, that are unjust, that are hurtful, and they go under the guise of religion in one form or another. And they need a larger audience, they need a more prominent voice, they need a conversation that's kicked off. They need to inspire people to get off their chairs and out into the world and being active in some way. And that doesn't mean participating in rallies per se, but it means doing more than you're doing now.
Yeah.
Whether that's liking a Facebook page, whether that is attending a conference, whether that is attending a rally, whether that's writing your MP, whatever form your activism takes, I think is
as simple as giving financial support to a cause as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, our friend Dave is fond of saying that there are all kinds of tools in everyone's toolbox, and we just need to group our toolboxes together and be more effective.
And find what sort of inspires you. I remember I had, in 2011, I think it was, I had gone on a cruise, a Caribbean cruise, and I think about 40 of the 1,000 people that were on the ship were loosely part of a kind of a skeptical community, and so we stuck together and we had a room, a communal room to our own on the ship, and we watched movies and we did presentations and about skeptical things, and some of them touched on religion, but most of them were sort of more a-religious skeptics material. And I remember somebody on the cruise talking to me about, what I was passionate about, and I'm passionate about pseudoscience and other really important things. I mean, it annoys me, it gets under my skin, it gets my blood boiling, but my default position, I always come back to religion as the thing that interests me the most, that bugs me the most. I mean, you don't have homeopathic practitioners going to war with naturopathic practitioners, or it's not the same thing. It may be very, very harmful, it may be terrible, we certainly need to do something about it. It's almost as nonsensical as many religious practices, but it's not as harmful and as historically rooted as certainly the Abrahamic faith and other so quote-unquote great religions.
And you're not going to worry about getting your head cut off if you go to the wrong naturopath.
Well, the caveat is you go to the wrong chiropractor, your neck may be wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, you might come out a quadriplegic, but
yeah,
if you're lucky.
Well, or at least you're not going to get set on fire then. Okay. Well.
Yeah. I'm sure we could find a pseudoscience that would.
Yes.
Burn. Well, there's what is it called? Ear candling.
Yes, I've heard of people like getting their hair caught on fire from that shit.
Yeah.
Do you think that the apathy that you guys are talking about with you guys up in Canada, or the atheist groups up there, do you think it's more because I know when I used to live in Canada, when I used to travel through Canada, it always seemed, compared to the U.S., especially when I was in my 20s and younger, that it was kind of like, oh, it's Canada, everything's all hunky-dory up there, Do you think it's more that you guys have been lulled into this because you don't have the issues like we have down here in the States with
Yeah.
religion?
I think to some degree.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Dan.
No, you go ahead.
I think I think you're right on the money, but I think it is two things, not one thing. I think it's a complacency, maybe that's partly deserved, in the sense that we have universal health care for the most part here. We don't worry about things in the same way because we don't need to worry about things in the same way. So I mean, it's a little bit like what's happened sort of in the last 5-10 years with vaccinations. I mean, one of the reasons that we are moving towards an anti-vax situation is because vaccines are being so successful. We've forgotten that they're so successful. Have taken the lack of disease for granted, and in some respects, it's the same situation with religion in Canada, where it is a more benign version of the American virus. But it. So I think in part we don't have something to react to in the same way as creationism in Texas school books and that kind of stuff.
Well, and like the two sort of hot button religious issues that they deal with in the States so much is marriage equality and abortion. Those are complete non-issues here. And like some fool will bring it up in the House of Commons once in a while, and even Harper, who is a fundamental Christian, is like, whoa, I ain't touching that shit with a 10-foot pole, like, in a way.
Here it's like a battle between the dumbasses who, it's not dealing with marriage equality, but Tom Cotton last week with his letter to Iran. Or was it Iraq? I mean, you guys don't appear to have the dumb shit on a daily basis.
I mean, we have it, but it's not as prevalent.
Yeah. I mean,
I think what happens is when a politician says something as dumb, and we have politicians that are equally as dumb, and something happened, and maybe Deb, you can remind me of what it was. It was just in the last week in the provincial. I think it was in Ontario provincial government. One of the members of Parliament said something anti-evolution.
Oh, yes. They said that they don't believe in evolution.
Yes.
And he was a member of the Conservative Party, which is Harper's party, and that's, now here they aren't as right-wing as they would be like a Republican, but yeah, and this guy was like, oh, well, I don't believe in evolution, and almost his entire party went, whoa, we don't know that guy. He's
yeah. That's the difference between Canada and the United States is the Canadian politician will say something stupid and everybody will back off and ridicule him.
Yes, that does not happen here. I mean, even Tom Cotton's statement last week, or the letter, there's really, except for what I would call your moderate Republicans, they're not condemning it. Some of them are like actually trying. You can tell their little wheels are going like, how can I use this to my advantage?
Well, sometimes an American politician will say something so stupid, and then what you'll hear in defense of it is a doubling down.
Yes.
Rather than
look at the whole rape issue from 2012. The quote legitimate rape. Do you know they're still talking about it? They're still making analogies to the whole. It's like. I should have moved to Canada 20 years ago when I had the chance.
But the other part, Beth, that I think explains what's going. I mean, so that's one part of it. Is our problems are not as prevalent as your problems and whatnot. But I think the other part of it is the Canadian personality. We
Yes.
are an apathetic race of people, and I use that sort of liberally, but yeah, I mean, as an immigrant, as somebody not born here, and certainly like my parents obviously spent way more time in Britain than I did, and sort of grew up in that part of the world and grew up with the political mindset of sort of a British person or a European person, where your average Briton is very political. You don't have to be Ivy League to be sort of really knowledgeable about current affairs and political events, and you talk about it over the dinner table, and that probably sort of filtered down to me, and I consider myself a very political animal. But I know my dad, still to this day, will sometimes talk about, oh, those Canadians. And what he means by that, when he says it in that way, is that apathy. Is like, why are they not getting worked up? Why are they not having the conversation? I mean, that probably annoys me more than anything. Is they're not having the conversation. I mean, the first time in my life I remember Canadians as a group of people getting outraged over anything was probably like 10, 15 years ago, when Rogers was caught negative billing, and
Oh, yes.
and that activated the average Canadian, whereas a lot of real issues were kind of flying under the radar.
Kind of bad, but so you guys don't know, Rogers is the media monopoly basically here, sort of a Time Warner kind of deal, but they control most of the cable TV. They have a huge chunk of the cellular market, and they provide the internet that you're seeing me on right now. But they were caught. Basically, people were having to opt out of certain features, like they call it negative billing. So they would bill you for stuff unless you expressly said you don't want them to. And people lost their shit over that, which they should. But there's a lot of other things that you should be getting riled up about, asides, your cable bill.
Yeah. Don't screw with my TV was the thing that got everybody riled up. I mean.
Yep.
So I think that's the other part of it. I think that we are sort of more apathetic in that way. We don't rally in the streets. We don't.
Yeah.
I
unless
think
it's
that's
hockey.
Yeah,
Unless
I was gonna say, you guys hockey's a whole nother ball game.
I think you're confusing the word rally with riot.
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
I always joke, Spencer, they're going to deport me because I don't like hockey, I don't like Tim Hortons, I hate winter, and I don't like beer either. So I'm expecting to be deported at some point.
I think you're officially have to hand in your citizenship.
It's okay. We'll take her in the United States.
Yeah.
I've heard a few offers.
And she has a co-host who played hockey for 26 years, happens to be idolized Tim Horton, the person. I really don't like their donuts. I don't drink beer, though. At least not Canadian beer.
Yeah. No, I never quite. And it's funny because my family is about as Canadian as you can get. They go back to at least 1830, if not further, on the other side, So, I mean, technically we're British and Scottish, but no, we're a super Canuck. And I like to say, too, I come from a long line of rednecks. Canadian rednecks. 'Cause I've been told by my southern friends that Canadian rednecks aren't really rednecks, but, but we can have the hick off at some point.
I'm taking you to Redneck County when you get here.
Which one?
Okay,
the one up yonder.
Up there.
I spent a New Year's time in the Shenandoah Valley one year, and on New Year's Eve, I started hearing, because we had let fireworks off earlier in the day, and I mean, holy shit, the fireworks that we just had were bigger than some of the towns around here have. But we let fireworks off for New Year's, and then midnight came, and I start hearing these banging noises, and I'm like, "Oh, is that more fireworks?" And my sister-in-law was like, "Nope, those aren't fireworks." I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" It was like the hillbillies shooting off their fucking guns.
Guns. Yeah, we.
I'm like, really? Oh yeah, they do that.
We have a retired dentist who has a collection of cannons.
Oh,
Oh shit.
As you will.
Yes. He's a Civil War recreator type person,
Gotcha.
and he collects cannons. And every New Year's and 4th of July, we get a nice little sound show. I don't know where he shoots them off, probably down at the old airport, but yeah. Talking about shooting off guns.
But better than the new airport.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
It reminds me, there was a couple of years ago, Mythbusters were doing something with a cannon, and one of their cannonballs got away and like went through someone's house.
Oh, really? I
shit.
didn't know that.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing, I'm glad I don't have a show where I can blow people up by accident, because I mean, blowing shit up is, but not by accident. That would suck.
Yeah. I agree.
But yeah, so I mean, you did a good job getting us apathetic Canadians to kind of get together and learn stuff and get riled up as much as we do, anyway. But no, it really worked. What was that, Beth?
I was gonna say, I mean, it just. I can see why you I mean, what you talked about with the conference, I can see why you liked it. And from my perspective, like you and Spencer both, and Ellie and all them, I mean, you're the type of people that can be the catalyst up in Canada to get people going.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because, like I said, Dominionism is infiltrating up there. You got the anti-vax movement that's already started, or is continuing up there. I mean, and that's the type of things, besides the politics and the religion, that has to be fought. And
Yeah.
It's you guys that are going to do it.
Well, all it takes is one group of loons to kind of go, hey, those guys don't give a shit about much of anything. Let's go up there and try and make everything all about what we want,
Yeah.
and see that. Somebody go, well, they just do their thing, and they're not going to get on your case, so let's go up there. And, ugh, that's like my worst nightmare.
Never take anything for granted. I mean, freedoms can disappear. You can regress. I mean, the arrow of progress is not smooth in one direction. I mean, it's messy, and sometimes you take 2 steps back before going 1 step forward, especially if you're not vigilant, especially if you're apathetic.
As Carrie Livgren said, progress, we are marching backwards.
Yeah. Well, as long as you keep the worst of your nut jobs down there, and yes, you can definitely keep Ted Cruz. We don't ever want to see his face again.
I think we should just ship him back to Cuba.
Well, okay, Cuba, yeah, that's fine. And if I can find a way to lure Cy 10 down there permanently, you can have him too.
No.
One of these days I keep thinking, well, Toronto's way too big, but I'm like, if I ever run into that bugger on the street, I'll be ready, man.
I'm curious. I want to get the input from all three of you. As non-con 2014 was sort of the speeches, the talks were torn from the headlines of that day. I've attempted to do the same thing with this version, non-con 2015, in Kitchener on August 22nd. What do you think are some of the big topics that are relevant, so sort of in the last 6 months to a year that?
Pseudoscience.
Okay.
Yeah.
Certainly,
That,
sort of the anti-vax stuff is sort of the measles outbreaks and whatnot.
well, not just anti-vax. The just pseudoscience. You got the food babe and her bullshit. You got people like Vanna Harry is who the food babe is for people that don't know. You have the whole MMS bullshit. That's Carrie Rivera. She's based out of Mexico, which is tied in with Jim Humble of the Genesis 2 Church. You have, you got the creationist bullshit coming out of Texas. That's still big.
Yeah.
I don't think you guys have so much of an issue up in Canada with the many religious freedom from religious acts, the religious liberty.
Yeah,
as we do down here. So but yeah,
but
pseudoscience is my big one lately.
And I think one you actually have already addressed for this year is with NSF and Raif Badawi. I mean, that kind of shit. It boils my blood that Saudi gets away with the shit that it gets away with, and that it is on the Human Rights Council of the UN. Like, are you fucking kidding me? Like that just
defies logic, doesn't it?
It does. I think, was it you that posted that video today of the CFI addressing the United Nations about Saudi? And
the United States CFI member Michael Dodor, I think his name is, if I remember correctly. I don't know if his title's UN ambassador, like CFI UN ambassador or something. He's spoken a few times about these kinds of things, and about Raif Badawi in particular, I believe. And he was speaking to them very recently. I think that video was just a day or two old that I posted today. And he was quite kind of calm but biting in his accusation of that hypocrisy. I was just say, like in Sweden recently, they sort of one of the first countries to kind of address it more from a political policy point of view. With I can't remember the details of it, but something to do with supplying arms to their ally of Saudi Arabia, and maybe cutting back or sort of canceling those plans. And we know that the Harper government, quite directly, I believe Harper was over there negotiating the deal, supplying arms to the Saudi government, in quite a lucrative contract. I think the factory that is going to be supplying that is out of London, Ontario, and nearby there. So it's
lovely.
Yeah. So, and it's to be noted that Harper has not said one word about Raif Badawi.
Yeah, that
about that case whatsoever, and it's not a distant issue from a distant land that we're not connected to. We're directly connected to it. As most people are probably aware, his wife and children live in Sherbrooke, Quebec, and half of the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And the hope, obviously, is for Raif to join his family in Canada.
Yes.
I did not know that.
Yeah. So there's a direct Canadian connection to this particular story, and it was. And you know, Deb, I don't think Beth and Ashley know, but the keynote speaker this year will be Lawrence Krauss, which I'm tremendously excited to have him.
And I'm trying to figure out a way to get up there.
I don't diminish Krause's presence, because I mean he's a massive figure in the atheist community, and is, you know, a huge advocate for science and reason. And I'm privileged to be able to host him here in Canada, in Kitchener. But I must say I had a different emotional reaction when NSAF said yes to me about her attending and speaking at the conference. It sort of hit me more emotionally that, and she was so gracious about it, and she accepted the invitation like I was doing her a favor. Um,
Can I
and I
ask you
can't.
a really dumb question? Who
Go.
is Ensaf?
That's Rafe Badawi's wife.
Okay.
Yeah.
I get confused with names.
That's okay. And Ensaf Hader is her name.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, this is something that preys on her mind every single day. She hasn't seen her husband in a few years, and obviously tremendously worried and concerned about what is happening to him in the present tense, and B, worried about what will happen to him future tense. And people have been following. I'll just sort of give the story for those few that haven't heard it. Raif Badawi is a blogger in Saudi Arabia, and he wrote a few articles about liberalism in in the Saudi kingdom, and he was accused of blasphemy, and there was an accusation of apostasy, and I'm pretty sure he's not an atheist. I'm pretty sure that NSAF is not an atheist either. That they're maybe generally sort of free thinkers. They may be liberal.
Yes.
But I believe they're believing Muslims still. So the accusation of apostasy wasn't even correct. The accusation of blasphemy may have had some merit, except that the accusation of blasphemy never has merit.
No, not at all.
No, because it's
well, my take on that is if your God is offended by words, then what kind of a weakling is that? And why does your God need you?
Yeah, maybe allow that particular deity to fight his own battles, right? It's always to me how the people always end up doing the fighting for that particular.
Like if your God is so magnificent and wonderful, and I say something that pisses him off, then why can't he come the hell down and smite me on his own? And like, why does he need help from you people?
Yeah.
I think Rafe's story strikes a chord with a lot of atheists for a number of different reasons. Yeah. And I know it has for me. I mean, I've shed a few tears over related stories around what is happening with him. I mean, obviously, it's a very personal story, and one we can all sort of, as atheist activists, maybe relate to on some level, in the sense that we do what he is doing in 10 times worse, quote unquote. If being blasphemous, if being a free thinker, if being critical of ideas is bad, which obviously most of us would agree that it's not, but we do those things on a daily basis, and we may get grief from our family members or not, and we may be marginalized, and we may experience some flack in one form or another, but no one I know here walks around worried that they may be beheaded for or lashed for their activism.
Yeah.
And he was convicted, and he was to receive 1,000 lashes, 50 every week until the 1,000 were done. And it is my understanding that that it's 50 every week because you'd never survive 1,000 in one go. So the idea is to mete out the torture over an extended period of time to allow you a week to heal enough that you can rip open the flesh again, which is a disgusting thing. It's barbarism. It's medieval, except we're not living in medieval times, except perhaps we are if you
in
live
those
in parts
places.
of the world. Yeah, exactly. So,
Well, I know it. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say that when the lashing started, in particular, there was an uprising. I think that's not too strong of a word to use across the world. I see posts every day from different parts of the world, rallies, big and small, free rife campaigns, and the Saudi government is arguably feeling the pressure.
Well, they released that statement a week or so ago where they were whining about people trying to intrude on their sovereignty and all that shit. It's like, well, stop acting like a bunch of barbarous idiots and maybe people will leave you alone to do your own thing, but you're being a bunch of assholes and people are calling you on it.
Yeah,
Well, has he received any more?
No.
Okay, so that is correct. He's only received the first 50 then?
Yeah.
That's correct.
And is he also facing another trial? I've seen that.
Potentially.
Yeah, potentially, and where they're saying that he potentially faces the death penalty.
Yeah.
Yes.
See, that's what I don't understand is he's in jail? I guess jail now.
Yeah.
Yes.
So how is this something that they found before all this happened, or is this? I mean, I don't understand that.
Well, from what I understand, this is what Alishba explained to me was the judge who originally tried the case wanted to prosecute him for apostasy at that time, but there was something about that judge's jurisdiction that did not allow him to actually try Rafe for apostasy at that time. And of course, Saudi has since amended those laws, meaning that this judge now does have jurisdiction, and so he wants to have another crack at Rafe to try and have him executed. That's my understanding.
So basically double jeopardy.
Yeah.
What we call double jeopardy.
Yeah, they don't give a shit about that.
Yeah, well, yeah.
But I don't know, Spencer, you may not have known this, but our friend Paul, who does the podcast Coronify Me, he did a special, because he had NSF on his show a while back, and he did a special for Rafe and NSF a couple shows ago, and I did a piece for that as well, and it does hit home to me because I'm a fucking loudmouth, you know. I don't care who I tell. If somebody gets in my face about a religion, you're gonna get it back. And I will post shit on my Facebook and on my Twitter, and I will be scathing about it. And to think like you said, I'm 10 times, if not 100 times worse than anything Rafe has ever said. And I get to do that with impunity just because I happen to be born here in Canada. And that's just wrong. Like, speech, you must have free speech to have a healthy society. You have to.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, really, this year's conference will primarily be around issues of free speech and kind of the idea of can religious privilege survive a free and open society? If you have truly free speech, can religion thrive in that kind of environment? I mean, I think the answer is probably no.
Yeah.
And maybe it's interesting to reverse that question and say, can free speech survive kind of theocratic thinking? And I think the answer is no to that as well. I mean, I think Saudi Arabia is perfect.
Yes.
Proof of that.
Yeah.
They can't allow. I mean, I get it. They can't allow free speech in that country because you can't run theocracy and have free speech at the same time. I mean, it doesn't work. So that they have to be against free speech. They have to be against the freedom.
And yet, to me, and this is a point I brought up in my speech I did for Paul's show, was, you know, if you're having to force people to have your beliefs, then that means that your beliefs are not viable enough to stand on their own. If you've got a good idea, you should be able to present your idea and have people follow that idea because it is intrinsically a good idea, and not have to physically force people to basically pretend that you have a good idea. So just by that action, you're proving that you're weak and that your idea is fundamentally flawed, because no one would believe it unless you force them to.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
I mean, in the same vein as you know, when something bad happens, sometimes there's a positive reaction to it. And when the Harper government had, you know, 8 years under its belt and had chipped away slowly at, in a way, freedom of speech, because they were gagging scientists and shutting down programs, scientific programs and whatnot. And after that was chipped away for 7 or 8 years, it was bad enough, and that somebody like Katie Gibbs got angry enough or active enough to form an organization called Evidence for Democracy. And I think the same thing has happened with free speech and bloggers and blasphemy and all these kinds of things going on. Is just in the last, arguably 3 months, or certainly I haven't heard about it for much more than 3 months, there's a coalition that has been formed that has, I think, over 100 different organizations attached to it, called the End Blasphemy Laws Coalition.
Yeah.
And there's some prominent Canadian representation on that coalition from some national organizations such as CFI, Center for Inquiry Canada, and from Atheist Freethinkers, which is Quebec-based, and from an international organization called Atheist Alliance International, AAI, whose current president is Canadian from Calgary, Christine Shalska. So I'm hoping to get as many of those leaders of those organizations that are part of that coalition to do a panel discussion on blasphemy, free speech, and in particular that sort of grassroots activism, how the coalition came to be and what they're able to do.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Excellent.
so that'll be interesting.
Well, let's take a quick break and have this week's logical fallacy, and then we'll come back and wrap things up. So let's see how fast computer can be this time. It's like the lottery now, you know. And now it's time for logical fallacies for dummies. On this installment of Logical Fallacies for Dummies, I'm going to talk about the argument from personal incredulity. This means that you discount your opponent's argument as false because you personally don't understand it or cannot follow the line of reasoning or proof being offered. For instance, someone might say they don't understand how Wi-Fi internet can work, therefore it cannot exist or be true. Of course, whether you or I understand something has nothing to do with whether it's true or not. I don't know a damn thing about physics, but I'm not about to tell Lawrence Krauss that physics cannot exist because I don't understand it. How idiotic would that sound? This time, I have the pleasure of being in the examples I have chosen for you. Remember our friend Nephilim Free from a couple weeks ago? Well, I had the pleasure of being in on one of his hangouts this past weekend. We were discussing the existence of the historical Jesus. I don't think that the historical Jesus ever existed, and this is really a conundrum for Nephilim Free and some of the other theist participants in the group. Let's listen.
How can you be a history nerd and not believe in Jesus Christ?
I've read several very, very, very studied historians that have refuted all of the canonical evidences for Jesus.
Oh, wow, really?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I don't think so.
I don't have all the details in front of me, but I've read enough to convince me that it just doesn't work.
That's
Have
absurd.
Have you read
It's like saying General Motors did.
story, though? Have you looked at both sides?
Who?
The ones like the books who say he did exist. Have you read any of those books?
Listen to what this is what
from real historians. I'm not talking about like just people, the Christian
But
people.
those people, but they're not. These guys are real historians too. Just because they come to the conclusion doesn't mean.
No, I'm starting to think they're not.
No, it's just silliness, really, to say Jesus never existed. Yeah, it is. It really is. It's,
if you want to think that, that's fine. I mean,
well, it is. You know, come on, be
I don't
it
have
is.
all
That's a severe suppression of the truth.
That's right. That's right. And you know, I don't have any problem with you not believing that Jesus walked on the water, or controlled the elements of the atmosphere, or it calmed the seas, raised the dead, walked on water, turned the water into wine, healed the blind, cured lepers, or anything else. But to say he never existed is just silliness. Come on.
Why?
I
But why
don't
would
think this is worth. It's not worth entertaining such a thing anymore. Let's find another subject.
If you
It's
don't,
absurd.
yeah, that's fine.
People like yourself, or what the things you say is, I'm sorry, is so absurd, because if you were, and people like yourself were in a position, you would contradict the majority of scholars on the subject who are atheists. Almost all of them that are atheists acknowledge Jesus existed. You would contradict what they say, these scholars on the matter, and you would revise history to write somebody out of it whom we have more historical evidence for than the majority of people in the ancient world.
So here we have multiple examples where the speakers seem quite confused by my stance on Jesus and dismiss my position entirely. Now, to be fair, there was a lot of discussion going on between these clips where I discussed some of the historians who have written about the lack of evidence for Jesus and why some of the previously accepted evidences are now being called into question. Nephilim Free at one point read off a list of historical writers who many Christians claim have written of Jesus. When I explain why those accounts are not really good evidence, he again gets confused and dismisses my ideas outright. It was actually rather amusing to experience firsthand. The great thing about academics is that science and historians, among other disciplines, are always searching for new information to expand our knowledge base. There's an incredible amount of information out there now, and we can discover more every day. A lot of this information I don't know about or don't understand, but that doesn't mean it can't be true. True is true, no matter what you or I believe, and trying to claim an intellectual victory based on your own ignorance is incredibly stupid and dishonest. Always be willing to examine new evidence, and if you don't understand the information, ask for clarification, take a course, talk to some experts, but don't dismiss it out of hand because it doesn't fit into your knowledge base. Thanks for listening, and join us again for another Logical Fallacy for Dummies.
People
Did you like that one, Beth?
People like yourself.
Behold, the atheist.
People like yourself. Just because we question shit.
Yeah, it was funny. I don't know if you had a chance to listen to that hangout yet, but it was educational. So Spencer, that guy Nephilim Free, he's this fundamentalist YouTuber who he hosts these like marathon 3, 4, or 5 hour hangouts, and oh yeah, there's another guy called Brett Keane. The last one that I came across of his went 8 hours, but I know well he would leave and come back and whatever, but yeah, so I ended up in a hangout on Saturday night with this Nephilim Free guy and with a bunch of secular TV folks, and it was an education in frustration and yeah, lots of fun. But we're coming up on the end of the evening, so first off, Beth, do you want to tell everybody how to find you and your blog and all of the crazies that you like to write about?
Easiest way is on Twitter. Links to my blog. It's Dune9998. My blog is Havoc and Chaos, and that's hosted over on Blogger. That's the easiest way. Or you can find me on Facebook. I'm always floating around.
She is. Awesome. And so, Spencer, whereabouts online do you find yourself?
I'm mostly on Facebook, so I mean, Spencer Lucas, on Facebook, you'll find me very easily. All my posts, or 99% of my posts, are public, so you can follow me. You don't have to be a friend to see most of my posts. As far as the conference goes, there's a Facebook page for the conference, the non-conference. If you search that within Facebook, you should be able to find it and like that page and keep up to date with new developments as they come, because there's still a few speakers here and there that we're still signing. So most of the lineup is kind of rounded out, but we're still adding some features, and there'll be some exciting and special events happening at this year's conference that didn't happen next year. But like the reception the night before, the Friday the 21st, for instance, that's part of your VIP ticket, which will get you into more of an intimate social setting the night before with the speakers and select attendees, which I think will be really exciting. I mean, anybody going to the conference will get opportunities to do some socializing and mingling. We'll have lunch and dinner catered at the conference right there on site, which will
I thought that was wonderful.
Yeah, it's a big difference to the way we did things last year, and I think we had to do the things we did last year to make the first conference viable. But I'm glad we're able to do that this year, and which will mean that you're sitting among the speakers, will be eating with us, mingling with us, which will be really good. But the reception gives you it'll be a slightly different atmosphere, and plus you won't have to. I mean, every speaker will be inundated with a few hundred people at the conference, or more, depending on how many people end up buying tickets. But only a few dozen or so at the reception. So I think some people are really excited for that.
I am.
Get your VIP tickets soon, because they are actually running out. They are the hot item right now. And go to www.the-conference.com. So the non-conference.com with a dash between non and conference.
Just like in the poster behind you.
Yep, just like that. Go to that, and you'll see the page will be updated throughout the week with that kind of information on it, and it'll give you an outline of when the early bird ticket runs out, and the prices go up, which will be May 1st, I believe. So if you are all interested in attending, and why the hell wouldn't you be interested in attending, then probably best to do it sooner than later.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I know. I got my ticket. Wait. And one of the other speakers that I don't think you brought up yet is Faisal Al-Muhtar.
Yes, how can we forget Faisal? Faisal spoke at the first conference. He's
via Skype.
kind of he. If people don't know Faisal, he's a young Iraqi atheist refugee that ended up coming into the United States about 2 years ago into Texas. I have no idea how I stumbled upon Faisal because I was introduced to him 3 months after he arrived, and he ended up doing a Skype. I ended up doing a Skype interview with him when I was the president of the Sudbury Humorous Association like a year and a half or so ago. And I've kept in contact with him ever since, and he's a rising star in the
absolutely, and he's funny
right.
as hell too.
Oh, he is fucking hilarious.
Yes.
And, so a lot of people were really excited to see Faisal last year. Were slightly disappointed, as I was, that he was not there in person. He was the only one that couldn't attend. He was hopeful that Homeland Security was going to allow him free passage across the 49th to attend the conference, and he wasn't able to get his green card in time. He's subsequently got it, so he's for sure able to attend in person this year. So I felt like I've met him. I've talked to him so many times, but it'd be actually nice to shake his hand and have absolutely. a beer with him. So he did his speech last year under extraordinary circumstances because the way it was set up, he was doing it via Skype, and we could see him, but he could not see nor hear us. He had no feedback, and that guy has comedic timing blind.
You would never have known. Like, if I didn't hear about that after having been there, I would never have known that he was doing that blind. It was amazing.
Completely blind, and he had the audience by the palm of his hand, and
oh yeah.
Yeah. So I can't wait to have him talk in person.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, thank you, Spencer, for joining us this evening and talking about the conference and all of that stuff. And glad you could make it. And all of you out there, go if you can make it to Kitchener in August 22nd. Go get a ticket already because you will be really regretful if you don't, because it's going to be amazing. And those of you who can't make it to to Ontario, whatever, I will be at the Reason Con next month in Hickory, North Carolina with Miss Ashley, who sends her regrets, but her work called her away again. But yeah, we're going to be down in North Carolina with like this huge pile of really awesome speakers and podcasters. So if you can't make it to Ontario, which shame on you if you can't, go to North Carolina because a lot of us will be down there too. And it's going to be very warm from what I hear because it's already warm down there. And I like the sound of that because I'm really sick of the cold. So, from Beth and I, thanks for watching, and as usual, I'm going to close out the evening with our friend Dave's Humanist Creed.
I know the truth and power of reason and of rational thinking, and I will use them to my advantage. I know the truth and power of educating myself and of expanding my intellectual boundaries, and I will educate myself. I know the truth and power of vanquishing ignorance, and I will do so whenever the opportunity presents itself. I know the truth and power of morality without supervision, and of true and accurate righteousness. I know the truth and power of obliterating tyranny, be it intellectual, emotional, or philosophical, and will work toward that goal whenever and however possible. I know the truth and power of human ingenuity. I know the truth and power of human compassion, and I will be mindful of the welfare of others. I know the truth and power of equality and fairness for all living things. I know the truth and power of the importance of our families, our friends, and our fellow men and women. I know the truth and power of human stewardship of our lands, our waters, and our skies, and I will try to act to preserve our environment. I know the truth and power of the sciences of mathematics, of physics, and of chemistry, and of the important role of these disciplines in understanding the workings of this cosmos. I know the truth and power of the rejection of all notions or beliefs that reside in the supernatural or the superstitious, and of those notions or beliefs that we are not supposed to be able to explain. And I know that these rejections are necessary for humankind's survival. I am a human being with a free mind, liberated from irrational influence and from unreasonable dogma.